G'day and welcome to the Off-Chain Podcast. Don here with you, and our guests today are Eric Hillerbrand, CEO, and Omar Saadoun, CTO and co-founders of Brainstems.ai. We're really excited to have Brainstems back on the show today to discuss the AI intelligence economy, their journey so far, and how Brainstems enables businesses to share global AI models without compromising data privacy. It's a really big deal. Let's dive in with our conversation with Eric and Omar. Omar, we've had you on the show before. Thanks heaps for joining us before, and thanks heaps for coming back as well, giving us an update on what you're up to and where we're going. Eric, brand new to the pod, maybe help us understand, how did you come across Web3 right in the very beginning? Do you have an origin story for Web3? Is it something that you came across from the technology side or from the product side or business side? How'd you get started in Web3?
Well, actually, there's sort of an interesting story there. I worked for a very large retailer in the United States, and we were responsible for implementing their AI system. This is probably about close to 15 years ago, when you could barely spell the word AI. And at the time, what we did is we integrated a whole lot of vendors that had product recommendation algorithms. And rather than choose one, the best in class, what we said to all of them is, look, we'll pay you based on how much each of your recommendations contributed to the overall revenue of this retailer. And in order to begin to track that, we were probably one of the earliest implementers of blockchain and micropayments.
Wow, all right.
And that was a very successful implementation. And I think a lot of those companies made a lot more money in that kind of competitive environment than if they had done things individually by themselves, or we had picked or chosen one of those individually. So it started then.
All right. How did you go from there to now Brainstems and building something that is really natively Web3 and AI as well?
Yeah, well, even in that experience with the retailer, the CEO at the time was very, very keen on this notion of how do you disrupt or rethink the way supply chains operate. And that was probably foundational. But even going back to my very first experience in the corporate world at the Coca-Cola company, there were some longstanding relationships. The story I like to tell is that Coca-Cola and McDonald's had a very synergistic, symbiotic relationship starting in the 1950s. And the mythology was that it was a handshake deal between the two CEOs. This is a relationship that doesn't need a contract. But yet what permeated the halls of Coca-Cola was this fundamental mistrust of this partner. And it didn't, it wasn't overt, but it meant that some things were shared, some things weren't shared. And so even going back to the very first experience that I've had, and that I've done things on the government side, there's always been this idea that businesses that have to work together don't really like working together. And so how can you try to use AI, and how can you try to use Web3 technologies to create new ways of corporate or business collaboration and business coordination?
So that's what inspired you to build Brainstems, build this protocol?
Yeah. It's just like, look, let's try to tackle this problem one more time. And maybe the technology world is ready. Or to put it differently, the technologies that are available help us solve this problem in a new and creative way. And I think not only has there been maturity on the Web3 side in terms of tech, and you see a lot more. At the time that we first integrated blockchain, it was very hard to find anybody who could even spell the word blockchain on the developer side. Now you have access to great resources. But the advent of cloud computing meant that you could solve this problem with just throwing a lot of CPUs or GPUs at the problem. And then with artificial intelligence, it enabled us to create new models for what collaboration looks like. And I think those models are highly disruptive. What we're seeing, Don, is that you're beginning to see a new paradigm emerge, a paradigm where it's no longer necessarily data-centric, where everybody looks at the problem as what data sets do I have access to, or how do I manage my data, to beginning to think about how AI fundamentally changes the way intelligence is created, intelligence is shared, and businesses can collaborate in the development of that intelligence.
So this is kind of, you've been working with AI for a long time. Like you said, before people were even really, it was science fiction, back when you actually started to implement it. How is it now that every second startup seems to be AI and all talking about data? What you're more referring to is this intelligence economy. Obviously, data's massive, but big data in particular has been big for a very long time, at least, decade, 15 years, in the mainstream at least. What about the intelligence economy? How do you take the intelligence that AI, artificial intelligence, can make or can develop and actually utilize it for, not just a ChatGPT kind of write me an article or find me this data point? Like I said before, one of the key kind of aspects of Brainstems that I find really fascinating is being able to create intelligence with combining or using different data sets without compromising those data sets. That for me is it's a revolutionary actually endeavor.
Yeah, so I think there's a couple of points that I'd make in response to your question. And I think your question is a really good one, and it's a very fundamental one. What I see in the industry, and whether that happens to be in the AI space or the Web3 space or the Web3 AI space, is a uncertainty or confusion about what is the role of these AI algorithms. And a lot of the tech that I see out there is taking AI algorithms and applying them to sort of old world problems. It's like sort of going from 4-function math. Let's just take some data and do some addition and multiplication. But then we went to linear modeling, and now we're going to AI modeling. And I think that for many people in the tech world who don't have a lot of experience in the business world, that's what they're doing. Old problems, just a new algorithm. And the question then is does AI engender or create a new paradigm? And, obviously from a Brainstems perspective, we think the answer is fundamentally yes. And that means that AI can solve a new class of problems. And that means you look at data very differently. Even if you look at the huge boom and focus on large language models, what's interesting about those is that all of the open source and commercial large language models are all essentially using the same data to train their models. And what's beginning to emerge is companies saying, hey, wait a minute, I have some proprietary data. What do I do with that proprietary data that creates competitive advantage? And so you're beginning to see people recognize that unique data sets are incredibly important to creating new ways of solving this new paradigm of problems. And so the way that we think about the intelligence economy and this pivot from a data economy to an intelligence economy is that in the data economy, it's all about the efficiency with which you manage data. So you could think about this as fundamentally tied to what I would describe as a retrieval architecture. How can I efficiently put data somewhere? How can I store data somewhere? How can I retrieve data? And it's an efficiency game, which means that it is all about how cheap can you make that process. And so there's this in the data economy, this continuous pressure on price. Reduce the price, increase the efficiency. But when you move to the intelligence economy, just any definition of intelligence would say, look, it's about learning and generalizing how to solve a problem in a particular context. It's about problem solving. It's about acting in a way that delivers a solution. And when you start thinking about intelligence as solving a problem in a particular context, it's no longer about efficiency. It's no longer about price. It's about how valuable is the action that I'm about to understand. How valuable is that in helping me solve the problem. And you just sort of look at the stack of business problems, and there's some problems that businesses face that are so valuable or so detrimental to the business that solving them means that the value is great, and the price that I'm willing to pay for it is great. And so that's not tied necessarily to data, and it's not tied to the efficiency with which data is being processed. What it's about is figuring out what is the problem that needs to be solved. How valuable is that problem that needs to be solved? And from an intelligence economy perspective, it's what kind of infrastructure do you need when you're buying and selling intelligent actions? And so I think that when your question about data, and everybody's been talking about big data, people are stuck in a mindset about this retrieval economy and a retrieval architecture, and sort of pushing themselves into an environment in which they're thinking about efficiency, and they're being dogged by pricing pressures. Whereas if you begin to move into this world of intelligence and saying, how do I create actions that solve problems for people in a particular context, and how valuable those are, the focus on data fundamentally changes, because there's a lot more pieces in that puzzle than just data when it comes to acting. It's like, how do I understand the present? What is my present circumstance? What are the options available to me to solve this problem? How do I figure out the best action to take in light of the context that I'm in? So there's a lot more intelligence, if you will, on top of the data that's far more valuable to businesses than merely just, I got a data set and I'm going to sell it to you for $1,000.
Yeah. I mean, obviously people have been doing a version of that, an analog version maybe, for a long time, in terms of how do I use my mind, or how do we hire the best people who can develop an understanding or create intelligence based on a particular kind of data set. How is that moving now from analog into digital?
Well, what's been interesting in the conversations, I just had a conversation actually 2 weeks ago with the CEO of a business that does probably close to $1 billion a year in revenue. And I midway through the conversation, I turned to him and I looked at him and I said, you and I both know that your business is far more complicated and far more complex than any of the data that you have available or the people that you have analyzing your data. And his response to me was, you're absolutely right. What drives me up the wall, what keeps me up at night, is the fact that there is this complexity in my business, and everyone in my C-suite or everyone in management that knows that this business is complex. But what I don't have access to is the intelligence that helps me solve those particular problems. And the next thing out of my mouth is then, well, is the way to solve that to hire a bunch of PhD data scientists or PhD artificial intelligence engineers? And Don, if you've ever supervised data scientists and artificial intelligence engineers, and I hope if there are people in your audience who happen to be data scientists or artificial intelligence engineers, close your ears. I'm going to say something really insulting, but they're artists, right? And artists have egos, and as they should. And managing a bunch of egos is a real painful process. And so the answer isn't necessarily, as you said a moment ago, solving the problem the old analog way, which is let's just hire a bunch of Stanford PhDs to solve this problem, because managing that process is invariably difficult. Partly because, and this relates now back to another important part of Brainstems, is that if you get 4 data scientists in a room, PhDs, you get 15 opinions on how to solve the problem.
Sure. Yeah.
And you as a manager who has no experience whatsoever in managing, you're used to dealing in a business environment in which there are not 15 opinions. You're faced with, how do I manage these people who have 15 different opinions? And what we've found when it comes to intelligence, and we think about the intelligence economy, we think about the infrastructure that's required, and we think about the role that Web3 plays in that infrastructure. It's about, how do you harness those 15 different opinions? And what we've seen over and over and over again is that when you have an infrastructure that allows multiple parties to participate and sort of we use a Lego block analogy here. To put the Legos together and to build the castle, you're going to get the castle built far faster and far more efficiently. And it's probably going to look a lot better when you had a number of builders contributing to that build. And as a result, you need a way, and this is the genesis of Brainstems, you need a way of giving a recurring revenue to those contributors who participated in that build. And so what we've essentially done is said, let's look at that old analog method that or approach, Don, that you just described, and rather than try to beat it out of that culture, you sit there and just say, well, look, let's embrace what's going on here. Let's figure out a way to through an infrastructure and through Web3 to be able to enable the collaboration, whether it's multiple data scientists or multiple businesses, to be able to build a capability to find the best action to solve the problem in the right context. And then you use blockchain to reward everybody. And you do that in a way in which there's a recurring value.
Yeah, man, there's heaps to pick apart there. Omar, I'm just conscious that we haven't heard from you really at all yet. So I'm just wondering, in terms of...
That's fine. I love hearing Eric, speaking and he does such a good explanation on how he envisioned the intelligence economy that I'm fine. I can be a spectator here. That's fine for me.
Sure. Well, also should say...
He's really the brains behind this. So, Omar, come on, talk a little bit.
Eric, you're not anti-PhD as well, obviously, holding one yourself. Let's go, Omar. In terms of the art factor of it, like I really love how Eric, you put it, that those data scientists are artists. Obviously, there is science in it, it's in the name, but there is art to it as well. And one of the things that I've been wondering over the last couple of years since AI has really hit the mainstream or become prolific is, do we lose some of the art? How good is AI at replicating the artistry of science, if you like, if we can put it that way? And some scientists might hate to think about it like that, but can an artificial mind make the same connections that an analog mind can? Obviously, it can make far better or different, I should say, and far more connections. We're just wondering how are you thinking through, or how does that work synergistically? Basically, how Eric laid it out. Omar, I'm really keen to hear from you. How do we keep the art in it, or do we just say we can get generally better answers without the art? The art of it can provide some good answers, but it's too slow and too small. The science part of it gives us adequate answers. How are you thinking through those kinds of things?
The way, first, I'm becoming an AI specialist, of course, since I started working with Brainstems, but I'm a software engineer, I have been in computer science all my life. And so I understand how it works, but there is a part of coming from more the kind of the mathematics and the statistics and all that part that, I need to go deeper into my knowledge and learnings. But my point of view is probably more practical. And I will say I don't think it's killing the art part. It's more about enhancing the way people can work and can produce. And if I take myself as an example, I've been able to find more options, or in a fastest way, and even being more creative than before. So is that killing the art? No, I don't think so. Of course, if you start becoming lazy and depending too much on the AI part of it, then yes, you are killing the art, but you are killing even more things. You stop thinking.
Sure.
So I see it more as an enhancement if you are able to use it well and apply to everything. It's like you can quickly become more specialist, about different topics in a faster way, and being very, very creative. To be honest, I've been able to produce so interesting outcomes using AI that I know I could be able to get there, but it's going to take me, I don't know, 100 more times, So, that's kind of the way I see it. But at the same time, there is a counterpart of this, and it's important also to understand what are the tools you are using, and how biased that can be, and being aware of that. So it's like when you're using a model, you need to know how that model was trained, what's the kind of information was used for that training, where it's coming from, how it was treated, how it was labeled, how it was, filtered, because that will bias, some of the answers that you are getting. So if you think that, this model is the absolute ultimate truth, so I will believe everything that is coming out from there, you are making a mistake. You need to be aware on the process, because, and if we go back to our own business and what we are providing, in the business environment, knowing about the way a model was trained, because I'm asking, or I'm extracting intelligence from it for making my own business decisions to act on my business. I need to be aware of that process. I need to be aware of how it was made, or I need to be able to go back and see what was all the entire history. It's more about knowing, and definitely not killing the artist and the art part, but definitely needs to be known, and learn, and understanding everything that surrounds all the process.
So it's not abstracting the human element; it is amplifying it. Much like coders are regularly saying, I can do 2 times, 5 times, 8 times as much output in the same amount of time as before, or copywriters are doing more and researchers are doing more. So he's saying it's not about delegating everything or kind of relying on the AI to come up with the perfect answer, but there's still that artistic element in terms of interpreting the data.
Absolutely. And it's in some cases you can even rely, but you need to be aware on how do you rely, why do you rely, and it makes sense or not. So a simple task that usually you had, 1,000 people doing a particular very simple thing. Well, maybe now you can have, agents doing that faster and in a better way. So in that case, maybe you can rely. Now, when you are, rethinking your marketing plan, well, you quickly have 10 different versions of that based on the kind of outcomes you are expecting, stuff like that. But ultimately, you will be deciding this is the mix that make more sense. But imagine trying to make by yourself 10 marketing plans.
Sure.
It's everybody's going to say something way smarter than me.
No. I think what you're both talking about is really interesting, and I think one of the things that the tech community, both on the Web3 and the AI side, would benefit from is eliminating the word insights from their vocabulary. One of the things that we say to new hires is the one word that you can't say is dashboards, because there's this idea that in order to maintain the artistry that you both were talking about, that the way to do that is to provide somebody a number. And, if I say the number is 0.79, what does that mean? When my partner or spouse comes to me and says, look at this, and holds up a sheet of paper with a number on it, I don't know whether I should run for the hills or embrace her, right? Yeah. Because I don't know how to interpret where are we supposed to go with the number that she just provided me. And so that's part of why we talk in terms of intelligently enabling actions. And in the world of artistry, or the world of complex business, where problems are very ill-defined and solutions are very ill-defined, there's a great role for AI to help lay out not the best action, but just even alternative actions that I may not have thought about, that helps me as a human being not have to look at a dashboard and say, I don't know what, look, there's a bunch of numbers on here. How am I supposed to act when these numbers are produced by these fancy algorithms? And how do we nudge people to be a lot more comfortable with having these actions laid out and trying them out and seeing what happens?
Yeah, man, I love that, intelligently enabling actions. That's a very interesting phrase in terms of if you have a lot of data but can't interpret it, you may still be able to make an act, to do something, but perhaps not intelligently. Or if you can't interpret the data, you might not be able to take any action in terms of that analysis paralysis that you can get. So I like that.
Yeah, I have one of our customers has said for years that he wants to write a book for business people on how to help them think about the scientific method, because most business people have no idea how to think through where did this, as Omar was saying, where did this answer come from? How did this answer, what does this answer mean, and how do I act on this answer? I don't think the answer is a book. I think the answer is AI, to be able to help people do that because of the complexity of business. And I think part of what business has done, and it's not because of the business people, it's because the tech has not been there, is they've reduced business complexity to a simple cause and effect kind of, if I do A, B will happen. Well, It doesn't happen in life that way. It doesn't happen in relationships that way. And it doesn't happen in business that way. But because of the tech limitations that we've had, we've been forced to sort of reduce the complexity to simplicity. And I think that's where AI is really going to enable us to tackle a new set of problems. But all those problems have to do with the native complexity of business and helping business people understand the actions that take, not deliver to them, hey, the answer is 0.79. It's just not going to work.
Yeah. Yeah, man. Interesting that you mentioned in terms of hiring. Many of our listeners and viewers are founders and aspiring founders, or they are already in that C-suite. Just wondering, how did you two connect, and how did you connect initially with kind of your core team?
Well, we actually connected. I mean, I think this is my fourth startup, and we did this startup in a very different way, because we had a very grandiose, almost stupid vision that projected us way out into the future. The first thing we did is said, let's go find some customers. Let's go talk to customers about what their pain points are. And hopefully after you do that a number of times with customers, you're able to figure out a pattern, and then you build tech around that pattern. And of course, like any startup, the first tech you build is dead wrong. You thought you heard one set of problems, but it turns out that there's another set of problems that you should have been solving. And so the company was bootstrapped. Now the advantage of bootstrapping is you don't have external investors looking down your throat saying, okay, when's the return going to come? You're able to chip away at this grandiose vision. But the disadvantage from bootstrap is that you're always worried about the hires that you make, and you want to make sure that there's enough cash coming in the door to support the people that that you're bringing on, because hiring somebody is a covenant, or it's a contract. It's important that you support the team that you bring on. But you don't spend a lot of time talking about culture. You don't spend a lot of time talking about fit. And Omar and I met. Omar's in Uruguay. I'm in the United States. We met sort of serendipitously. But one of the first things that we saw in each other, and I'd love Omar to talk a little bit more about this, because he probably has a better perspective, because people who are natively Spanish speaking and from South America always have a much more creative way of thinking about things than the United States. But I think what we found was that there was just this really natural cultural fit for how we think about building things. And when you find that in a co-founder, and the company had operated somewhat before Omar and I hooked up, but when you find that kind of synergistic way of building things, not necessarily that our personalities clash or that our personalities are aligned, we have the same types of personalities, but instead that we think very similarly about how to create, that's something that's invaluable. And then you begin to do marvelous things. Omar, what do what's your take on that?
Yeah, well, in fact, the other day we were asked, how often we clash, and the answer was, well, we don't really clash. We have been working quite a long time together, and very good environment. But as any startup that is building, you face challenges, stressful situations, and so it's kind of the perfect storm for clashing. And still, we don't clash. And the reason for that is that, as Eric was saying, we have a very synergistic way of building. Like criticizing ideas, but in a constructive way. Seeing the value from our different angles, and using that as a trampoline, to improve the idea, to improve the process, and sharing that to the rest of the team. The way we met with Eric, by the way, I've been in Web3 and software development for a long time, and at some point he was looking, from this previous company, he was looking on the way to keep building and having this blockchain integration, like incorporating token and all of that. And I was used to have those kind of meetings, with customers that, they try to build something. Every single week I had somebody telling, I want to tokenize a soccer team, and my answer was like, oh, that is awesome. That is great. Do you own, do you own that you want to tokenize, or do you have access, the owners of that you want to tokenize? And most of the time the answer was, no, I don't have it. But, people will buy the token or stuff like that. I don't think it's going to work like that, Yeah. Well, one time I had somebody that said to me, yes, I have the soccer team, but that's another story. Oh. But Eric's answer was, yes, I do have something, and that is tokenizable, that is priceless, and it's going to be very interesting. And well, that started sparking my attention, of course. But the way he was looking at building, and the way he was thinking on integrating, and his openness, on building something that will be allowing others also to contribute, So it was kind of that was for me, that vision was the initial spark, Other than he had that element that was able to, that we were going to be able to tokenize and everything. So it made it interesting, of course, and attractive. But also it was like, okay, this makes sense. This is really a use case that is making Web3 valuable. AI is going into a nice direction, so let's keep talking. But even if it is something interesting and attractive in that sense, if you cannot work, in kind of building your own ecosystem where your contributions, from the CEO, CTO, and all the different parties and all the different contributors we have within our project, it's not going to work, because at some point it's going to, it's just my way of thinking, and that's it, and here is way more. Here's the vision. We share the vision. Let's see how we get there. What are the steps? And we know we are going to make mistakes. We know that but we will improve. We will adapt. And that's, that's the way we have been working, and we have been building for many months now. And yeah. And by the way,
continues down into
French.
your
I always repeat
home.
that. Sorry again.
I was saying that kind of philosophy then trickles down into the way that you hire and build the team as well, not just that kind of co-founder relationship, but also in building a team. For you, I'm asking.
Absolutely.
I was just going to say, we had a conversation yesterday with someone who works for us, and we said, look, we're going to give you a task to see whether you can do it, because we think you can, but it's so outside of your comfort zone and so outside of your skill set. We're going to experiment. And, if you're able to take this task on, it's a new role, it's a new job responsibility, new compensation. And what we had to say, what Omar and both said to this person is, look, we're creating a culture in which there's an opportunity to experiment, and we know that there's a chance of failure. And what we can't do is, if you fail at this new opportunity, there's a draconian implication, meaning you're going to lose your job, because that goes against the culture that we're trying to create. And so if you fail, we'll all learn from it. And the person's response was, wait a minute, I've not worked in an environment in which I can miss something.
Wow.
And not fear that I'm going to lose my job over it. And so those kinds of cultural principles, I think, is where there's also a great deal of alignment between Omar and myself, and how that permeates through the organization.
Yeah, that's wonderful. That sounds amazing.
So we'll see. We'll see whether he succeeds or not. And if he fails, we'll find out. That's what we'll do.
But even just that philosophy of we want to err on the side of risk taking, which means we're going to have failures along the way, but we don't reward. You don't want to reward failures as such, but you do want to reward risk taking that has an asymmetrical potential of return. And so,
right, exactly.
Yeah, that's good.
Exactly.
We also have a bunch of devs who love tuning in, and so it'd be good to get technical at least for just a little bit. And so I'm wondering, in terms of Brainstems, you mentioned before, both of you actually mentioned tokenizing AI models and data. How does that work? How are you incentivizing? You've mentioned incentivizing people to create. How are you incentivizing people to participate in developing quality intelligence that can then enable actions, like you mentioned?
That's a great question, and I can see it from two different angles. One side is how you build how you build intelligence, and the other angle is how you consume that intelligence. And both ends requires to have a contribution, requires development. As Eric said, we are in an infrastructure that it can be seen as building blocks. So that is what allows others to contribute in a more standardized way. So I can tell you that we have a way of registering assets such as models, such as agents, such as data, and you can see that as a process, but also supported by smart contracts. So it can come from, you just need to go through a formulary, and a simple form, uploading stuff, fingerprinting this and that, and that's going to be on chain. But there is a previous process of that. Is how do you build that model? How do you train that model? How you mark the provenance of the data, the process of the data itself that is using for the training, how it's being collected, how it's been filtered, clean, labeled, and all that process. If you are using contextual data against a model, so there is an entire process, an entire pipeline that we are providing that can differ or can be specifically implemented for a particular business. So because again, we are building an infrastructure that is open, so others can contribute on customizing that, or just using and implementing particularly like the way they want that to work. On the other side is how do we make possible the access to the intelligence? How do I consume the intelligence? And there we have a Jedi framework that is a conversational interface that has different elements that needs to be adapted to every single deployment, let's say. So in particular, if you are a food service company, you have a usual way of speaking or communicating internally. Well, that means that we have an interpretation layer that needs to be adapted, needs to be trained for a particular business. Because and in fact, when we are thinking about the ecosystem, you will have different companies contributing, and each company will speak about, an example, the same restaurant in a different way. And for the technical people, that means that restaurant has been identified with a different ID into the database. So imagine using several different data inputs that are stored in a different way, for training, and you need to ensure that your model understand that he's speaking about the same restaurant. So in that process, the interpretation layer, how you resolve identity, those are key factors. And those are places where you can contribute from the building of the pipeline for customizing the way you want somebody to use Jedi or somebody to interact, or the way you are doing a particular implementation using what is already existing. So I would say there are many different places from a development standpoint that we can have contributors. Of course, that includes data science. And on the other side is how, like, people that doesn't have any clue about the technicalities and how that works, and how they can support through the token, or how they can use the token to participate into that economy, by staking, by delegating their stake to others also that are participating. So there are many different ways, but focusing on the technical sides, those two angles, there is a lot there to participate.
Yeah, absolutely. Is this something that people, do they need to be sitting at a computer? Is it they chuck it on the server? They participate via a mobile phone? How people materially engaging with the Jedi framework or with the Brainstems kind of ecosystem?
Well, it can be staking the token, running a node, like participating as validating, and validation can be from validating the data that is being used. If you think on the data collection process, you have people that is collecting data, but we need to validate that data is real, and we have some discussions about what means data that is real and all that. But to simplify, like you can have a process where you are ensuring that data exists, is coming from somewhere, it's not random numbers, stuff like that, or competing on different data sets for the same thing, So there are different ways, more node, more protocol directed, that are more token driven, by staking. There are others that are more like, well, you fulfill a task and you get rewards and stuff like that. Yeah.
Well, one of the things that we're very excited about, and post launch of our token, we'll begin to roll this out, is that we actually think that staking is analog. That staking is can be intelligently enabled. Uh-huh. And so what we want to be able to do is empower token holders to act in an intelligently enabled way. So what does that mean in an AI environment, in an AI agent environment? And so what we're going to be rolling out is a way for token holders to have a AI enabled workforce that actually does work for them in an intelligent way that benefits the ecosystem, that knows how to operate within the infrastructure, so that it's no longer the human, if you will, that's going to be doing the action, But if you're a token holder, you need a workforce of intelligent agents that's going to work on your behalf, and they're sort of your indentured servants and are earning revenue for you, earning rewards for you, based on how smart you are and managing the workforce. So we're bringing AI.
I've got to say, AI agents are one of the most terrifying and exciting prospects for the next kind of 2 to 5 years in my mind. What does that look like in the Brainstems platform or ecosystem to have agents? What are they doing? And can they operate outside the Brainstems ecosystem, or are these specifically operating and participating in creating intelligence?
Well, they're really, agents have two roles. One is that when you think about intelligently enabling actions for businesses, we think in terms of the assets or the Lego blocks that go into the castle that's being built. So, as Omar said, it's data sets. It might be trained models. It might be a fine-tuned large language model that does X or Y or Z. And it might be an agent that has a particular that performs a particular role. In order for businesses to solve problems, all of those assets need to be composed into a working solution. So one part of the Brainstems infrastructure, as Omar said, is this composition, this ability to compose, put things together, agents being one of them. Because agents operate on large language models. Large language models need to be fine-tuned. Large language models need predictive models as part of their input. So you can see this sort of tech stack. That's on the business side, but on the token side, these agents are able to perform specific tasks within the Brainstems infrastructure. We call them activators. The activators help activate parts of the infrastructure, activate parts of the problem solution set. They're optimized for performing particular tasks in the infrastructure. But like anything you manage, you need to have a supervisor. You need to have somebody actually overseeing the work and making sure that these activators are trained in the right way and are performing the work. And how much are you paying the activators to do the work is directly related to the quality of work that they're going to do. So these activators are specifically optimized for AI enabling token holders to be able to participate in a much more intelligent way in this exciting thing we're doing at Brainstems, which is helping businesses collaborate in the development of AI and share and monetize that in the future.
That's really cool. When can people participate at that level? Is this immediately post launch of the token? Is that a roadmap?
Post launch.
All right,
immediately post launch. Yeah. It's exciting, and we think it's going to be a great contribution to the Web3 community, because it's the next evolution. It's a moving away from analog into the world of AI, and I think that it's I think we'll begin to see hopefully see, and we're certainly supportive of other Web3 ventures and projects to be able to take on this way of thinking, and it's something that we intend to provide back to the community to help accelerate the exciting possibilities, I think, that blockchain and tokenization, smart contracts promises.
Yeah. One of the questions that I keep having is, how are you ensuring security and transparency and fair compensation and data privacy? How does that? I mean, obviously, there's a big, tech stack that's doing a bunch of that work, or all of that work. But how? Without, you don't have to share any secrets, obviously. But you have cracked the code, if you like, to make this work, or is it just a factor of the technology is now available that enables it to happen, where 5 years ago it didn't exist? or is it something that you've just found the secret sauce to make it happen?
Omar, do we find the secret sauce?
I mean, I don't know if it's secret, but I guess it's like that expression, right idea, right time, right place. So the way I see it is that we are reusing, or we are using stuff that is available in a particular way, having the understanding on how business work, and using the tech for that. Of course, maybe 5 years ago, thinking about decentralized federated learning wasn't that possible in the way we are incorporating, because of the training requirements. Cost-wise, probably wasn't that easy. But now thinking that the training is going, it's every day cheaper. We have more models out there, more capacities, more stuff like that. It definitely makes it possible. That's one of the parts. So yeah, I will say, not surely a secret sauce. Definitely there is a recipe,
Sure.
but it's all the combination.
What are you most excited about for the rest of 2024? Let's go Eric first, but I also want to get your opinion on that too, Omar. What are you most excited about?
Well, what I'm most excited about is that we're atypical as a Web3 project, in that we started with, as I mentioned before, let's have businesses as customers. Let's understand their pain points. Let's understand what is the thing that AI can deliver that solves a new paradigm of problems. And we knew that Web3 technologies played a core role. We also knew that token holders played a role, but we weren't really sure what the role was until we really began to see a pattern in the pains that businesses were articulating, and we understood how the tech was going to work. And now we know, and we know the role of token holders. So the most exciting thing for us is to begin to engage the Web3 community to participate in this mission, and to enable them to participate in the ways that we've talked about, and build a community that is excited about the idea that there are real problems with real revenue that they can play a key role in, and it's philosophically aligned with the principles of Web3, in that it's permissionless and trustless, and it's decentralized. And so I think that for us is the most exciting thing. For me, is the most exciting thing, is to begin to share that with the broader community, and enable people to participate. And the more people participate, our goal is, we're in a couple of key industries. Food service, Omar mentioned, is that we want every single business in food, every single business that manufactures food, to be part of the brainstem, the food service brainstem. And the only way we're going to get there is with an active token holding community.
And back for you, Omar, what are you most excited about?
Look, for many years, I've been building blockchain-based products of all sorts. Since the beginning, I started building in 2016, all sort of products. And I realized that 99% of the time, there was no reason for blockchain to be there. There was no value. So it was more like, so you start seeing a lot of people chasing that blockchain use case, and what excites me is to see that we are probably, other than value transfer or money transfer or the way you want to see it. That still is, like DeFi and all of that, it still is the only use case that is out there working. But I see this as a real use case that takes value from the blockchain philosophy, technology, and way of thinking. This is a use case that is going to really take value from it. So, and I believe it, so wholeheartedly that it's and not because I want it to be, but because I saw it. I saw it. That's and that's why we started working together with Eric. And we continue working together. It's because we understood that this is the right way of solving this problem, and not forcing any use case, as we have seen a lot of times, forcing use cases to use blockchain because, we really need something to say, blockchain, has use cases. So it's, that's, something that wakes me, every morning when I can't sleep and all of that, definitely.
So you're both pumped for Q4. That's pretty exciting.
Absolutely.
One question I love asking at the end of the show is, and this could be about any topic at all, what is your most contrarian view? So what do you find yourself swimming against the tide all the time in? It doesn't have to be about, this could be about AI or Web3 or business in general or life in general. If you're happy to share, what's your most contrarian view? And I don't ask this just to be controversial, but because this is where we get really great ideas.
Omar?
Well, I will keep myself to the Web3 because otherwise I don't know how much time we have, but we can. With so many things going on in the world. But this is something I share a couple of times already. And I try, every time I speak to somebody on around Web3 and crypto in particular, we need to understand that value comes from hard work. Looking at quick returns, looking at speculation, that's something that will not stay for long. So every time, and all the time I'm saying, you have to work, you have to put your effort on stuff. So stop looking at green candles and crying when there are red candles, that's not working. You need to put your effort on stuff. You need to invest time. You need to put your mind, dedication, because that will pay rewards. That's going to be. So that's something that drives me a little bit crazy, especially when we look. I know how it is on the Web3 community. I've been, around for a long time. I understand, you get haters, you get, for very simple reasons, but that's exactly what I mean. We somehow need to get a little bit rid of the speculation, that easiness, make it happen, and all of that is, if you work in life, if you dedicate and you understand how that works, the effort that is behind building something, you will react in a different way, because otherwise I only see people sometimes that is, do whatever you need to do, but make it easy. I want big returns, and that pays some time to time. It's not the rule of being successful, let's say.
Yeah. So that's only contrarian in the Web3 world. Outside of Web3, that's...
no. Yeah.
How about for you, Eric? Any wisdom that you simply have?
Yeah, I really have two responses. One is going to fit right into the Web3 sort of AI space. I think what what I harp on continuously that probably is a contrarian view is getting people within the community to allow themselves to think in terms of a new paradigm, and that, it's easy to say, hey, we're pivoting from a data economy to an intelligence economy, but how do you I think the tech world, because of the training of people in the tech world and because of people's training as data scientists and AI, they're totally fixated on data. And because that's what you're taught. I mean, the first course you take in school is on database design, right? So you believe that data is the new oil. And my contrarian view is, what keeps you from thinking? What keeps you from thinking about this as being a new paradigm, rather than just trying to take, as I said at the beginning, new tools and solve old problems? And so I harp on that a lot, and I'm very critical of many of the projects that are out there that are focused on data, because I think that they are not necessarily the wrong projects, because they're elegant, they're beautiful technologies, but it's symbolic to me that people are sort of stuck in a paradigm that they need to break out of. So that's within the Web3 community. And beyond that, I think, I live in the United States, and the United States is a culture that's all about acceleration. It's all about improving efficiency, making things better constantly, new and improved. You see on every grocery product shelf. And I think that kind of acceleration in our culture is deadly. It leads to alienation. It leads to depression. It leads to a focus on consumerism at the cost of the vast majority of the peoples in the world. And so, one of the very contrarian positions and that I hold is trying to explore with people ways of operating against the tide of acceleration. And,
all right.
So there you go.
That is a strong tide. Acceleration, like the push towards growth, purple growth. Yeah, man, that's a tough call.
Yeah. Well, eventually it's going to kill us. So
eventually it is already killing people. Yeah. Yeah. Oh man. Well, let's finish on that high note. That's it.
Cheers.
I say high note in terms of that is a worthwhile goal, actually, Eric, to be about not deceleration, but to warn people about what's going to happen if we just keep going down this track. We seem to be barreling down. Yeah. Caution to the wind.
Well, there's some great writing out there that talks about what it means to operate in a different kind of acceleration, and as part of ultimately, and this is another thing that attracted me to Omar as a great co-founder, is a shared commitment to, at some point in time, maybe post TGE, and after we get everything rolled out, our Brainstems has a role in trying to solve that problem, and we have some ideas on how to do it, but more importantly, it extends beyond the scope of what Brainstems can do. So.
Yeah, man, that's really cool. Eric and Omar, thank you so much for joining us today. Really, really appreciate it. If people want to find out more about Brainstems or hear more from you personally, where can they find you online?
Well, website, where we have a website, Brainstems.ai. We have our Telegram, it's Brainstems. And Twitter, Brainstem_. So those are the main places. But going through the website, you can find all the different channels.
So if people want to,
we really would love those kinds of connections. So
yeah, that's great, guys. Thank you again, and looking forward to seeing the TGE, the launch, and yeah, man, all the best. I'm really looking forward if you would come back in the next couple of months or maybe early next year and talk about your learnings through that process, and the wonderful launch and great celebrations you had in intelligently enabling actions all over the place. That'd be great.
There you go. Love to. Thank you very much. Enjoyed it.
Thank you.
thanks for joining us today. We hope you enjoyed this episode of the Off-Chain Podcast. We love bringing you great guests like Eric and Omar, and hope we've inspired you to think more about Web3, about the future of our technology, and how you might be a part of building the future. As always, please like, subscribe, or best yet, share this episode with a friend. Help us spread the word, and join us again next week for another great episode of the Off-Chain Podcast. Till then, take care.